Your participation as a candidate interview process in the Cherokee County Republican Party. You, as the Republican candidate for Georgia Representative District 22, we want you to know that you are aware of the fact that the candidate interview will be videotaped in its entirety without any editing or commentary, and that you agree to such recording.
Yes.
You further acknowledge and agree that the video will remain the property of CCRP for its exclusive use, subject to any express grant of permission that it provides to any other person, entity, or organization. And you understand and agree that CCRP will exclusively determine its use of the videotape of the interview, which may include posting the video to our website and other dissemination of the benefit of the voting public. And
Okay.
release the rights and so on. That's what we just need you to agree to.
Okay, I agree.
All right, thank you very much. The purpose of this is to, the vetting process is meant to allow members of the party and the community to be able to understand all the positions, the views, and beliefs of the issues and questions held by those who wish to be elected to as a representative of the people. So we are going to be asking you several questions. Some of them are two-part questions.
Right.
We will go around the table and ask questions, each one of us, since we have one person that's been excused today because it is a Saturday. I will also be asking questions today. First of all, I'd like you to introduce yourself, and
Okay.
then we'll go around the table and each of us will introduce ourselves before we get started with the questions.
Okay. Obviously, my name is Nate Cochran, running for House District 22 seat. A little history about myself, I guess.
In just a minute, let's just finish
Okay.
with the introductions
All right, good.
next. Go
Glad
ahead.
I asked.
I'm Trenton Adams.
I'm Lori Pesta, the chairman of the vetting committee.
Jack Steven.
Harry Abrams.
Okay, I'm going to ask the first question,
Okay.
and then you can go ahead. What is your name and legal residence, and how long have you resided in Cherokee County, House District 22?
Right. My name's Nathaniel Cochran. I've resided in, legal residence is 854 Howard Road, Alpharetta, Georgia 30004. We are constantly asked about the Alpharetta address, but it's a piece of Cherokee County that has an Alpharetta address simply because it's the closest post office. And that's how they assign the cities to your address. Obviously, we're in Cherokee County because my wife was on the school board for a period of time. So, the second part was
How long have you resided in Cherokee County? That
Okay.
was the second part of that.
just in total,
Yes.
probably counting grade schools and
30 years?
yeah, probably 30 years.
Okay. I'm not trying to put answers in your mouth.
No,
That's
it's fine, but it's
So
close
you-
to that time because I had to take time away from college and for law school
Sure,
and
sure.
all that.
Okay, Trenton, you want to ask the next question?
Sure. Are you currently a member of the Cherokee County Republican Party? And how do you see your involvement going forward regardless of the outcome of the election?
I am a member of the Republican Party currently. I plan to stay involved. I've been involved in the past with the party. I served as treasurer for a period of, I think it was 2 years, back in 2006, or maybe 2007, somewhere from 2006 to 2008, and I forget exactly when it was. But I intend to stay involved, whether it be supporting candidates, interaction with the community, things like that, all in the name of the party, because it's important.
Please describe 3 pieces of legislation you would like to see passed in your first term, whether creating law or removing, amending existing law.
3 pieces of legislation. Okay. Let's see. Does it necessarily have to be legislation that's on the books right now, or is it
No.
just open-ended?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can just read the question, we can't really explain the question.
Okay.
so.
All right. No, sorry.
That's okay.
That's the attorney in me wanting to
Yeah, I
qualify
understand.
the question. I would like to see first I would like to see some sort of law or an implementation of a job growth program, whether it be waiving or lowering some of the corporate or business taxes, employee taxes that businesses have to pay. As a small business owner, it's something I have to be aware of, because when you hire somebody, you don't just hire them at the salary you pay them. You pay taxes on top of that salary. And so it's always a consideration, and if those taxes were lower, that might encourage some businesses to hire additional employees, because it will lower the bottom line of doing so. So I want to see some type of job growth legislation put into place. Secondly, I'd like to see legislation focusing our educational system not just on college preparatory, but on vocational. Because as an attorney, clients I represent, a lot of the wealthiest clients I have nothing but a high school diploma. But it's because they've entered into some type of trade and created a business and are very successful at that business. And I think our public educational system has gotten a bit away from the vocational training side of things, and we need to emphasize that more strongly. On a statewide basis and both at a local level, provide for vocational training such as welding, shop, diesel engine work, things like that, so when these students graduate from high school, they're not necessarily looking to attend a technical school, but maybe they're ready to jump into the workforce. And maybe do that in conjunction with certain industries and businesses, so that there is, they know that this vocational curriculum is ready to bring these students into their factories or their jobs prepared, instead of having to wait. And it'd be a big leg up for those students as well, because they're not having to wait the additional time to go off to a technical or vocational school to get additional training after graduation. Thirdly, I'd like to see I'm a big Second Amendment advocate. I'd like to see the carry laws expanded, whether it be, you should be able to carry in parks, and I think we have that now. I'd like to see suppressed hunting passed. I would like to see those rights expanded within reason. I know it's going to be baby steps, but those rights expanded because I'm a big believer in it's a person's individual duty to protect themselves. The police are reactive. They do a great job at what they do. But as far as taking that responsibility on, it's a personal responsibility you take on yourself.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
What characteristics and qualities do you believe are important for the state house representative? I'm sorry, I jumped on. Yeah,
Yeah, you're fine.
You're
Yeah.
fine, go ahead.
okay. What characteristics and qualities do you believe are important for the state house representative success?
That really is an open-ended question. But I think to me, some of the most important things would be a connection to your community, understanding your community, not forgetting where you came from, and understanding the people you represent and their voice. Staying connected to those people. So after you're elected, holding town hall meetings, holding local meetings where you invite everyone just to come and see you and talk to you about the issues. That's something I plan to do if elected. Another obvious important aspect is stay true to who you are. As far as don't get caught up in the politics of the Gold Dome, stay who you are. I tell people all the time, I'm not looking to make a career out of politics. This is something I wanted to do to serve my community. I really believe in that. I live by the saying of all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And so I want to, it's my belief that part of good men doing something is to enter into government because it affects our lives in their entireties, and try to make change for the good. And if good men stand back and don't participate, then the not so good are more than willing to jump in. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I don't, again, what my point was, I'm not trying to make a career out of this. I have a career. I have a job. I have a law practice. I don't need to make a career out of anything else. But this, I feel, is important. It's something that was laid on my heart, and I want to participate, and I want to make a difference.
Okay, thank you. What state house committees would you like to serve on? And the second part of that is, what do you think are the most important issues for those committees?
One, I would say I'd like to serve on, and I've sort of been told already that this is a given, placed on a judiciary committee, and that's because I am an attorney. But I see that as a positive because it's my understanding at the judiciary committee level, there's some sort of roadblocks or difficulties they're having regarding right to life issues. And my understanding and my goal is to bring a conservative Christian attorney's perspective to that committee, to fight for the right to life against the pro-choice legal advocates. And with my background both in constitutional law and as a practicing attorney, I think I'm well qualified to do that and to get in that committee and to fight for that side of the issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Based on your understanding of the Georgia Constitution, what do you believe the role of a state representative should be?
So I'm trying not to ask questions about the question.
Yeah,
Um,
because we can't answer.
Right, I'm trying real hard.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Role of a state representative, going back to listening to your constituents, staying in touch with the people that you represent. Obviously, your role is to show up and participate and vote. I mean, if you're elected to do a job, you better do it. I definitely believe that. So, I mean, that's quite frankly something I could go on and on and on about. Because to me, it's a privilege and an honor to serve in that capacity. Not something that should be expected or a right. And so you need to safeguard the office. And that's the way I feel about it, and kind of in a nutshell, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to take the next one and we'll go back this way if that's okay with everyone. What is your position on the bill to make certain offices such as sheriff, district attorney, county commissioners, county clerk, nonpartisan?
Oh, I don't agree with that. I mean, we have a party system, and while it's not perfect, it works. Having a party system, and especially now that you're vetting, I think this is great. I'm happy to do it. I wish they'd done it in the past. But at least you provide the voters with a basis of where a candidate's coming from. And that's important, because if you had a non-party system, my fear would be that it would be far too easy for a candidate to mislead the voting public and get into office, rather than actually be vetted by a party and have a basis that they should be expected to stand on. So no, I don't agree with nonpartisan elections.
Okay, Jeff?
What's your position on term limits?
Very mixed feelings on that. I guess my answer right now would be, I think it's hard to have a position until I've served in the office, because you never really know what pressures it brings until you're there. I don't necessarily believe that term limits are needed. That may change, but if a public is happy with the representation it's getting, I don't think it's the role of the government to force them to elect someone different. So I guess my answer right now would be, I believe in open-ended choice for the voting public, and I don't think it's the role of government to tell them that you shouldn't change it. And I understand you don't want to create a dynasty, and like in instances of the President of the United States, I think it is a good thing, but for a representative position, I'm not sure I think it's necessary. But again, that's subject to change, because I think the best viewpoint of that issue would come from firsthand experience.
Okay.
What is the purpose of the second, and this is a three-part question. What is the purpose of the Second Amendment? Do you believe that federal gun control laws are constitutional? Number three, does the state have the right to confiscate firearms in an emergency?
All right. First part, role of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was created by our founders, without getting into too much of a history lesson, created by our founders in order to arm the citizenry against its own government. They never envisioned any type of limitation on the type of armament. Quite frankly, my belief is that the founders believed that citizens should have access to the same weaponry that the government has access to. Not many people could afford some of that stuff, but at least it should be open. So the Second Amendment, it's not strictly limited to militias. I have no belief in that. I think it's an open-ended thing where you should have access to what the government has access to because of the founders' principles it was based upon. And it's my belief it's an individual right, because that was a court case not long ago. It's an individual right, not a collective right. See, the second question was could you repeat
Yeah.
the second part?
Do you believe that federal gun control laws are constitutional?
Okay, federal gun control laws. No, I do not. I see it as a states' rights issue. I don't necessarily think the federal government should be butting into that type of business. States have the right to the police powers, and so that's my feeling on the issue. Now, obviously, the federal government has butted into it because the Supreme Court found I just went blank. Wow, I can't believe it here.
Federal gun control laws and constitutional. Do you think they're constitutional? You said.
No, I was talking about the Supreme Court decision basically allowing the federal government to regulate, interstate commerce.
Right.
That's how they pull it. And because they can regulate interstate commerce, the federal government, especially through the National Firearms Act, doesn't necessarily regulate transfer of firearms, sale of firearms within a state. They regulate it interstate. Because a citizen of Georgia can sell to a citizen of Georgia without the federal government ever getting involved. But if you sell from Georgia to Tennessee or Georgia to Florida or anything like that, then the federal government gets involved. Now, the federal government regulates the types of firearms we can buy and sell, as far as whether it be machine guns, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns. And I believe that is an over-regulation. I think we should be able to buy and sell those items without the federal government stepping in. I do believe that's a states' rights issue. So no, I think the federal government has overreached, but that's a talk for a different day, because that's an in-depth conversation. But to answer your question, yes, I think the federal government has overreached. And I think the third part was the state right to confiscate in times of emergency. Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Flat out, no. I don't think the state should be able to confiscate your firearms at any point. The Constitution gave us a right to bear arms. That's what it is. It's a right to have them. And I don't think that should ever be taken away under any circumstances.
Okay, Trenton?
What is your opinion of constitutional carry and for the current limitations on carry searches, campuses and churches? What do you think about that?
Okay. I'm just taking a note, so I don't forget.
Will we
Right.
repeat the question?
Constitutional carry. I actually agree with constitutional carry. I don't think you should have to get a specialized license in order to concealed carry or to open carry. And that's kind of it. I mean, a lot of people feel, some, or not a lot, but some people feel differently, but you asked me my opinion and that's it. So, as far as, carry for churches and, let's see, you said churches, schools, campuses, and
Churches and campuses.
churches and campuses, and I guess by campuses you mean like college campuses? Okay. I think carry should be allowed on campuses and churches. I always tell folks, when you create a gun-free zone, the only people that are truly gun-free in those gun-free zones are the law-abiding citizens. A gun-free zone doesn't limit a criminal's ability to have a gun. Take Georgia State, for example, as a Georgia State campus, where they're located near downtown underground. It's a horrible place for crime. And those students are only limited by their ability not to carry because it's a gun-free zone. I think the level of safety would be raised. I think crime would be cut back if the criminals had some expectation that whoever they're assaulting, robbing, trying to take advantage of in a criminal manner might be armed to defend themselves. And so, no, I encourage support. I support carry on campus.
Thank you.
What does the 10th Amendment mean to you? And do you believe that states have the right to nullify unconstitutional federal laws?
I do. I believe states do have the rights to nullify unconstitutional federal laws. And basically that's the effect of the 10th Amendment. And so I think it's an important right that the state should be able to exercise. The problem I see with it is that the federal government, when they pass these regulations or they want to impose these laws and regulations upon the states, it's always tied to money. It's not necessarily just a law that they pass, it's tied to money. Take the Department of Education, when they pass regs and things like that, they tie it to money. So if your local systems want to get that pot of money, they have to agree to abide by these regulations or curriculum. And so I think what we have to do to be effective at least a state government level is creating some type of alternate funding mechanism, or at the federal level have our representatives ensure that the funding is not necessarily tied to the regulations when it's passed down. So I definitely agree. I definitely think a state should be able to nullify unconstitutional federal laws, and that should be the prerogative of each state to do so. But at the same time, recognizing it's more complicated than that because of the funding, and that we've got to find solutions for that as well.
Okay, Jack?
Are there any conditions under which you would advocate either raising existing taxes or implementing new taxes?
That is the first time I've ever been asked a question like that, especially in the capacity as conservative or Republican. I'm thinking real hard. I think the answer has to be no. I just can't see a place where I'd justify raising taxes.
Okay. Harry?
What is the state of Georgia's role in immigration, securing the border, and amnesty?
Well, going back to my previous answer, it's my belief that states have police power rights. We all wish the federal government would enforce deportation and the border laws, but we can't count on that. So I think Georgia should have the ability to enforce them on its own. That's how I see it. I mean, if they come into the country illegally, they should be escorted out and made to come in the right way. Because there's tons of people who come into this nation legally every year. And it's not something that's easy to do. I mean, there's a whole law practice dedicated to that. And so, no, I think Georgia should have the ability to enforce immigration laws on its own and do what's necessary to make sure we're not subject to a unregistered, unregulated populace.
Thank you. Okay.
What is your position on food insecure programs and drug testing for those programs?
Okay, read that one more time, because I want to make sure I get it.
What is your position on food insecure programs and drug testing for those programs?
Okay. Now, I'm gonna work under, I'm not gonna ask you what you're asking. I'm gonna say I'm working under the assumption that you're asking about welfare programs that are, drug testing to make sure the recipients are not using drugs in order to receive the benefits.
Well, let me clarify, we're talking about food stamp program.
Okay, food stamp programs.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Then I support it. Well, I mean, I'd support it probably anyway, even on welfare situations, but I support drug testing for those issues.
Okay.
Straight out.
What is your position on the Affordable Care Act?
Obamacare. I'm gonna call it what everybody knows it as. I think it's a travesty to begin with. I think it's an attempt at wealth redistribution. I can't in good conscience believe that the drafters of that bill ever thought it would result in affordable health care for everyone. I think that more than likely it was an attempt at wealth redistribution, because I think that's going to be what we see as the end game and result of that bill. I hope we can figure out how to opt out of it as a state. It's causing a lot of problems. People are losing their health care. They're not able to keep the same plans they were on. It's one of the biggest problems facing our nation right now. So, you know, the basic answer is I can't stand it. And we've got to figure out how to get around it or how to best deal with it as a state. And secondly, you know, we've got to provide alternative, at least figure out some alternative methods to offer to people to obtain health insurance.
Okay. Jack?
When is the government allowed to take actions inconsistent with or against the Constitution?
I'd say never. I mean, the Constitution is the model, the outline for how our government is supposed to operate and the rights that we have as citizens and the limitations upon the government's ability to do things. And so my answer is never. Now, does the government sometimes pass laws or do things that are unconstitutional? Yes. But that's, you know, what hopefully this court system is built in place to call it on. But bottom line, it shouldn't.
Eric?
What is the unemployment rate in your district?
I don't know. As far as just what the unemployment rate in my district is, I don't know. I can say that I don't, it's probably reflective of, you know, what the national averages tend to be, but again, I'm not sure. All I can say is that I know I have seen people hurting, and I don't mean that they're not employed. Because one thing I will say about people in the district I hope to represent is that they're hard workers. And if they lose a good job, they'll go get a job. It may not be as good, but they'll go get a job. So while it may not be unemployed, it may be underemployed. And I would, that's another reason the job growth and the economy is a focus of mine, is because I hate seeing people hurting like that.
Okay, Jen?
Do you accept donations from outside of your district? And if so, how do the outside district donations affect your decision making?
I have accepted a few donations outside of district, but it's been family. And it doesn't affect my decision making at all. It's people who have watched me grow up and say, we believe in you, we want you to represent us, and it comes with no strings. So, it doesn't have any effect on my decision-making as far as my district goes.
Okay, are you receiving PAC or lobbyist contributions, and if so, how will that affect your decision-making process, affect you by, having lobbyist or PAC
Right.
donations?
The only, let's see, I guess the only PAC or lobbyist contribution I'm receiving, to call it that, and I'm pretty sure it would be qualified as that, would be the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association. It's not something that affects my decision-making. It was actually, they checked with me to see if I was where they wanted me to be before they would adopt me as a candidate. It was a position I already took, and, basically the position there is, I don't agree with limitations placed on tort issues. I think the system works. I would not want to see a wife or kids who have lost a father or a mother or any provider like that limited as to the amount they could recover in an action simply because of a law that was passed. Being in the legal system, is my belief that the system works, or at least works as well as it can. We have the best on the planet in America, and to place a arbitrary limitation on the amount of recovery is not fair to those who have suffered the loss.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see. Please describe the geographic boundaries of your district and how much of your district includes Cherokee County.
Let's see, the geographic boundaries that go from North Cherokee down through Ball Ground, Macedonia, down through into a portion of the Holly Springs precinct, and then there's the branch of Bradshaw precinct. It comes up, it includes 2 precincts that connect there with Cherokee. It's actually 1.5 precincts in Fulton County. Then there's 3 precincts in Forsyth, Brandywine, Vickery, and the southern portion of Polo. And it goes back up through the Cherokee border around the top of Cherokee County. And what was the other part?
How much of your district includes Cherokee County?
Let's see, so precinct-wise in Cherokee County, it's Ball Ground, Pines Creek, Univetter, Union Hill, Freeholm, Macedonia, portion of Holly Springs, Bradshaw, trying to think and Hightower. So all those precincts are in Cherokee County. So, the northeastern section.
What percentage do you think that would be? Your
Probably,
perspective.
looking at, I'm trying to visualize a map in my head, let's see. Percentage-wise, I would say, and we're talking about percentage-wise in Cherokee County, what that,
In
let's
your
see.
district?
Probably, as far as land mass wise, I would say about 25%. It's gonna be less population wise, because the southern end of the county is heavier in population. But land mass wise, I would say 25%.
Okay. Barry?
For solutions to the traffic and other infrastructure issues, do you support the regional approach such as the Atlanta Regional Commission or another method of dealing with these issues?
Transportation is not an easy issue to deal with, and that's one of those that this is one of the few issues I think that takes planning amongst the various counties. Because if you're creating something like a Northern Arc, which they were looking at building a few years ago, or if you're putting in a new highway system, or you're wanting to put some type of interconnector, it's going to expand through several counties, if not across the state. And that's something that does have to be planned in association with the regional commission. And so there are uses for regional commissions. Now, as a whole, I do believe in local control. And so for road issues within the county, I would like to see that handled by the county itself. But I do understand the need for the regional commissions in planning large-scale road improvements.
Okay.
What should the state's role be in regards to alternative energy sources or subsidies?
Quite frankly, I don't think the state should take a role. I think it should be private industry. If there's an alternative energy source that is effective and that is useful, and that makes economic sense, private business will pick up on it and use it and push it. If it doesn't, then private business will leave it alone. So I don't want the state to come in and tell me that I have to use this particular type of energy source rather than this one, because to me, that's not the government's role. That's inhibiting me unnecessarily. Quite frankly, it can be bad for business. It can raise the costs of doing business, where they could be putting that money towards job creation or expansion, which could benefit the community, so.
Okay, there are a number of issues the agricultural industry is facing in Georgia, including water use, state and federal regulation compliance, tax reform, and immigration reform. What is your plan to address these issues for the agricultural community in Cherokee County? And I want to add that and I typically would not do this, but I'm going to do it. Your decisions as a representative will be addressing this issue all over the state, not just in Cherokee County.
Right.
But it is important that we know how you're going to address this in Cherokee County. I wanted to clarify that.
Okay. And you're talking about all right, just go through it. Taxing on agriculture, regulation on agriculture, what else?
Water use,
Water use,
tax reform, immigration
immigration.
reform.
Okay. Oh, that's a big question. And I'm afraid I may understand it enough just to be dangerous, but not enough to give an effective answer. But as far as tax reform goes, I would like to see agricultural industries, and this may be so, but I want to double check, be allowed the same types of tax breaks or tax benefits that standard business gets. And when I'm talking about job growth, I would like to include the agricultural businesses in that as well, because they provide jobs just like everyone else. Regulation of agricultural industry, I'm assuming we're talking about where they have environmental compliance.
It's state and federal regulation compliance.
State and federal regulation compliance.
And also water use.
Well, I'm trying to think about state and federal regulation on the agriculture industry. I mean, there's EPA regs, there's, where you get into production of beef, or you're talking about plant growth, the types of fertilizers that are used. I mean, all these are regulations that they have to abide by. And in my experience, some of these regulations stem from ideas of environmental protection, whether they be based in science or not. And I think all I guess an overarching statement to give us to regulations is I think they need to be closely examined to see what's effective or not effective. My guess is most things are not as effective as people would assert that they are, because we need to open up the agricultural industry's ability to do business. I'm just not a regulation type of person. I don't believe that it's government's role to set too many rules. And so I would take a close look at everything. But at the same time, there have to be, some rules regarding common sense of how meat's created and distributed. That makes common sense. But bottom line is, in my mind, it's a huge, broad area, and to narrow it down as to what to do about any particular regulation, I'm not sure, so I'm trying to give a broad-based answer. Water use is something that is obviously going to be a big issue going forward in the future. As to water use, I think what we can do as a state legislature is promote the creation of water resources. By that I mean, what do we call them? It's not aqueducts, but it's,
Reservoirs?
yeah, creation of reservoirs around the state so that we have water sources to pull from. We're already in litigation with other states regarding water basins, and those are going to be continued fights that we have. But we do need to plan for the future as far as water use goes, and I think that's something that is really starting to come to light and is beginning to be addressed, but it's something that has to be followed through on.
Okay. Let's go on to the next question, Jack.
What is your opinion on the Common Core State Standards Initiative?
Pretty much reiterate what I said this morning. It's and in my mind, Common Core kind of reminds me of Obamacare, and that it's one of these things of the Democratic liberal agenda is this is a great thing, but you won't realize how great it is until it's fully implemented.
So no one's in it till you read it.
Right. And so I just, and the theory, the idea behind Common Core is that it should be the same, the curriculum or the structure and set up for a student to be able to go into school in Georgia. They should be able to go to school in California, move to Florida, and it'd be the similar enough curriculums under Common Core that they don't lose a step. That's just not practical. Education is tailored to geographical areas, not just socioeconomic areas, but geographical areas. And each area, and not just state as in areas. I mean, you boil it down to communities, to counties, to groups of counties, and education has to be tailored to each individual area. And so I can't see how something like Common Core would be expected to be successful. My view on education is the most local control is the parents themselves.
Okay. Okay.
What is your most important interest outside of your work?
First and foremost, I'd say my family. We have 3 children, my wife and I do, and our relationship with our children, and assisting or trying to get them to grow up and be productive members of society and good Christians. That's our foremost goal. Past that, probably my involvement with my church. We're involved with Coming First United Methodist Church. And then I have but see, you ask outside of business, and I kind of consider this part of my business, being my involvement with gun rights issues. Because I have I participate with Georgia Carry. I'm a member of it. I'm a member of the NRA. I have GeorgiaNFA.com, which is the online business providing gun trusts to people who would like to purchase items regulated by the National Firearms Act, which class 3 items like machine gun suppressors, SBRs, SBSs. And that is a passion of mine, but at the same time, that's a sort of a business too. So, but outside of business completely is definitely my family and my church.
Okay.
Would you work with those across the aisle to pass the budget?
Loaded question. Because working with someone across the, you hear, I think the phrase reaching across the aisle, working with those across the aisle is tossed around a little too easily. And I think it's one of those phrases used by the liberal side as a, well, basically them sitting back and saying, well, if you want to be reasonable, then you should agree with us. Well, that's not always what it is. I mean, I'm able to work with anybody, and I say that because my business, as an attorney, I'm in contentious relationships all the time. It's adversarial. What I do day to day is an adversarial type of work, and so I can sit down with most anybody, discuss an issue, and come to a resolution, as long as they're being reasonable as well. So if I guess my answer to your question is that if the other side of the aisle is willing to be reasonable, then absolutely. But if the other side of the aisle is not willing to be reasonable, then no, because I do believe in standing on principle.
Thank you. Jackie, take that one.
Right. Do you support the fair tax or consumption tax or some other alternative plan?
I support fair tax, bottom line.
Okay, again, just a couple more questions we want to go over, and I want to thank you again for your participation in our vetting process. I find it to be, and I think that most people find it to be a real benefit tool for the
No, I
voters,
think so.
and we appreciate your participation. The next few questions are a little lengthy, so I'll just go through them real slowly. Have you ever had any license revoked or non-renewed for cause, or been the subject of professional discipline, or cited for breach of ethics or unprofessional conduct by any bar association, disciplinary committee, court administration agency, or other professional group, or have you been expelled from any organization, and if so, please explain.
No. The bottom line is none of the above.
Number 2, have you or has any organization or business under your control ever declared bankruptcy or been sued or currently facing liens or other financial issues?
No.
So explain. Okay. Have you ever been arrested for or convicted of any crime excluding minor traffic issues?
No.
Okay, and please describe one instance in which you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved.
Okay. I'm thinking because I have to think of what I can talk about. In the business I'm in, I can't talk about everything I handle for clients.
Well, this is you personally, on a personal level, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, when you talk about ethical issues to an attorney, you trigger our bar ethics mode.
Yes, I understand, that's why I clarified.
Okay, all right, personal level. I'll say this, I'm entrusted with money a lot by people, both in my business and personally. And I believe I'm entrusted with that money because people know I'm not gonna take it or steal it or misuse it. So it's, I'm trying to think of specific instances. I mean, there's tons of instances where, I'll have overpaid or underpaid for something, or somebody doing work at my house or work around, and I always make sure it's the way it needs to be. Or if I've made the error, then I'll leave it to them to come to me and say, you overpaid me. Because it's also something I want to see in other people. So outside of money, I don't like, I'm a big believer in confronting problems head on. Sitting down and talking to somebody, instead of going, talking about them behind their back. I consider that an ethical issue. And I find that typically if you do confront them head on, you at least, even if it's not resolved, you at least know where you each stand. But sometimes it prevents greater problems as well. So, I have refused to represent people in my business because of ethical issues having nothing to do with money, simply because they've come to me and what they want to do with an action or litigation is not in keeping with my Christian principles. And I have the right to tell someone I don't want to represent you, and I do it.
Okay, thank you. Are you currently connected to any outstanding unpaid taxes in any way?
I think there is a issue of a lien on record in Forsyth County, but it would have been, it's a result of a tax, it was wrongfully filed as a result of a tax filing that was made in 2010, I think it was, where we had just had a child born and that child didn't appear on the taxes. It was amended and filed, and they removed it or took care of it, and it didn't show up in Cherokee County, but somehow it's in Forsyth, which my property's not even in Forsyth. So it's been, I just became aware of it, so I'm getting that straightened out. But it has no basis, it's just there. So if somebody were to see it, yes, it's there in full disclosure.
Okay. The last question is basically a few minutes for you to explain anything else that the voters should know about you that we have not addressed.
Okay.
So it's your opportunity to talk to
Okay.
the voters.
That sounds like the last question. Okay. My job is coming to my answers a lot today about, being an attorney. It is part of who I am. I'm not going to hide it. Now, I'm not I consider myself a country attorney. I'm not a high-rise silk stocking type attorney. But I think that's an advantage, because in my day-to-day life, I see the practical application of the law as it's created down at the Gold Dome. And it's one thing to draft a law and create a law and think this is good. It's different to see its practical application. And so I think I have an advantage over the other candidates in that I understand that better. And then I think I have an advantage over the other candidates in what I was saying, like in that Judiciary Committee situation, to fight for an issue like pro-life, because I have that background and that basis. Not saying it makes me any more knowledgeable, but it's credentials, and the world works on credentials sometimes, as to your opinion. I'm a small business owner. You can say he's an attorney, but it's not just being an attorney. I employ people here in the county. And so I am a small business owner. I pay employment taxes on my employees. So I understand the operations of a small business owner and what they have to deal with day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, and what could possibly help them and what's likely going to hurt them. I have experience in a lot of different businesses simply because of the type of the work I do. so I see a lot of different aspects of a lot of different businesses. I'm from Cherokee County. This is my home. I don't have any intention of ever leaving. It's my hope that one day my kids, when they grow up, go off to school, that they come back here to work and prosper as well. Because this is home, this is community. I'm 8th generation here. And I'm serving because I want to make it a better place and I want to keep improving it. I'm not in this, I've said it earlier, I'll say it again, I'm not in this to make a career of it. I've got a career. I'm in this to serve. Look no further than that. I want to, staying in office will not affect my decisions. I intend to do what I think is right. I'm not saying I'll always do what is right, but I'll do what I think is right. And I'll determine what is right by listening to the constituents and getting input. And if by making that vote, it means that I'm unelected, well then I'm unelected, but I'll be able to sleep at night. So, that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much for participating in this job, this voter job interview, so to speak. We appreciate your time.
No, my
Thank you very
pleasure.
much.
I'm happy to do it. I'm glad this has been done. Like I said, I think it would have been useful for many elections in the past. So.
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.